Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and welcome to our first flight across the Atlantic in the Airbus A321LR. Today we are going to fly from Lisbon over to Washington for about an 8-hour flight across the Atlantic, as is operated by Air Portugal on a regular basis. Let's go ahead and start having a look into our flight plan, and thereafter we are going to start setting up our aircraft for the flight. So this is what our general route is going to look like. We're going to depart Lisbon and we'll fly a random route. Initially we have a small Oceanic segment until we are covered by the Azores again for about an hour and a half, and then we are going to cross the Atlantic and fly just south of the drag system, and finally we will make landfall roughly at Cape Cod and abeam Boston on our way into Washington. Now, let's go ahead and have a look at the significant weather charts, which are typical winter weather North Atlantic charts. Initially we've got good conditions as we come from the Azores High, but then once we get into the region where the Azores High conflicts with the low pressure systems that we normally see over on the Canadian side, we start finding a couple of weather systems here. We can find thunderstorms up to flight level 400, so we'll have to see if we might need to deviate a little bit to the north over here, and thereafter we are going to cross a couple jet streams with a core in flight level 320. Our planned cruise level is 340, so we might get into a little bit of conflict there. Getting over to the other side of the Atlantic then, once we're clear of the jet streams, we should have good flight conditions until we reach US airspace, where once again you can see on the number 1 down here, we do have some moderate turbulence forecast up till flight level 400, until we eventually make our arrival into Washington. Now let's go ahead and have a look at the weather in a little bit more detail. We can see there are a couple of SIGMATs published for our route of flight. Starting in Santa Maria, Oceanic, we've got embedded thunderstorms forecast up to flight level 420, and then over in Gander we do have severe icing forecast, and last but not least in the New York Oceanic FIR we do have frequent thunderstorms observed. So that's the general conditions. Now let's have a look at our airport. We're departing Lisbon and we have got very good weather conditions all over in Lisbon, and getting over to our destination Washington we do have good weather and the forecast stays good for the day as well. Only tomorrow they are gonna get some bad weather systems moving through. Now our primary alternate is Baltimore, and Baltimore has good weather conditions as well, as we can see. And last but not least, let's go ahead and have a look at our ETOPS airports. So we have Lajes as our first alternate, and Lajes, as always, has the anemometer inoperative, so we don't have any wind indications there, but the forecast tells us that they do have some rather strong winds. It is a runway 14 down there if I'm not mistaken, so the winds are within the acceptable crosswind limits for a landing. And then on the other end side, on Canada, we are using Stephenville today, as the primary alternates like Gander or St. John's are all below the limits. Stephenville, however, is a good option. As we can see, they do have good weather conditions all over. Last but not least, worth mentioning, the temperature over in Stephenville. And if we just have a look where Stephenville is, located on Newfoundland over here, then they do have plus degrees. It's +2 Celsius over there. That is quite good. At this time of the year you could easily expect something around -10, -15 over there as well. So overall weather conditions are quite okay. Now let's have a look into our flight plan, where we are going to check Lisbon to Washington. The flight is coded as an ETOPS flight, and we are planning at cost index 20, flight level 340 for our entire flight today, and crossing at Mach 0.79 over the North Atlantic. If we scroll down a little bit, we can have a look at our fuel, and the minimum block fuel is 23.1. Now, I don't really see any reason to take much more than that, so the only reason why I am taking a little bit extra is because I haven't flown the indie-built A321LR on a long haul yet, so I'm not 100% sure about the fuel usage, even though we are using the official profile. But nonetheless, let's just take fuel for about 15 minutes extra, so something around 600 kilos more, which means we're going to use 23.7 tons of fuel for the flight today. Now, quick check. We are within the maximum landing weight, we are within the maximum takeoff weight if we take that additional fuel, which is something that you should always check on aircraft that are rather maxed out, like the A321LR is on a flight like this. But as you can see, we do have some 3 tons of margin to the max takeoff weight, so 600 kilos more is still going to keep us within all the limits. Okay, and that's the basics of our flight preparation, so let's go ahead and board our A321 for our flight over to Washington. So we're going to take a seat on the captain's seat today, and then let's go ahead and start setting our aircraft up. So engine master's off, mode selector norm, weather radar is off, landing gear lever down, wiper selectors off, battery voltage more than 25.5, and with that the batteries are coming on and the external power is also coming on.
Runway awareness, okay. Meters.
As you can hear, we have VRAS installed, and that is working just about fine, including display integration into the cockpit displays of the aircraft, which is one of the features that I really love about VRAS. And of course, full disclosure over here, yes, I did receive a free copy of that add-on, but it really doesn't change my opinion about the add-on very much. Okay, our aircraft is now powering up. Let's make sure that we do have our radios turned on so that we can hear something in case ATC is calling us. So 122.8 and 121.5. Here we go. And we are listening to both VHF 1 and VHF 2. Also want to listen to the interphone in case the ground crew is calling us, and that's it. Alright then, so the temperature outside is rather cold, as you can see, just 9 degrees outside. Let's go ahead and fire up our APU so that it gets a little bit more comfy by the time that our guests start boarding the aircraft. So APU master switch on and APU starter on. RS mode selectors, 1, 2, 3 going into nav. Cockpit lights are set, and then let's go ahead and have a look at our EFB initialization. So starting on the dashboard, we are going to import our SimBrief flight plan, please, and that's correctly imported. Portugal 231 Papa it is. Onto the payload then, we can import that from SimBrief as well, and as already decided, we're going to use 23.7 tons of fuel, which is very close to the maximum. 171 passengers on board and 7.7 tons of cargo in the hold, leading us to a gross weight that's just shy of the maximum takeoff weight. Alright, so 92.6 and 93.9 is the maximum. That looks good to me. Very good, then let's go down to the takeoff page, and over here we've got Lisbon runway 02, the weather is automatically imported. For the takeoff weight, let's calculate 93 tons up there. Config 2 takeoff, air conditioning off, and calculate. So performance limit is okay, 98.4 is the maximum, so we can take off. And we have pretty high speeds, and we're going at full toga it seems. Okay. So, those are the basics on the EFB. Then let's accept our aircraft for service. So, clear all that stuff. And clear status, recall. And we only have fuel, 0 fuel weight, CG disagree. Okay, yeah. Clear, remove. Aircraft is fit for service. We don't have any OABs today, and the aircraft configuration summary, it's an A321LR. We do have automatic nav on go-around, we have the LEAP 1A engines fitted, the new nav 8, and most importantly, we have the center tank fitted since we are in an A321LR. Alright, so that's the basics. Then we have sufficient oxygen. It's not very much in here, but it's something. Hydraulic quantities are good. The engine oil quantities For that we gotta turn the FADEC on. Engine oil quantities are good for the flight. Okay, brake accumulator pressure is sufficient. Parking brake released. Brake check is looking good. Flap lever up in agreement. And the speed brakes are retracted. Okay, perfect. So that's our basic aircraft acceptance completed. Then let's get right into the procedures and prepare our aircraft for today's service. So is that CBR test not working? Oh, there it is. Was just very quiet, but it's within the acceptable limits. Refueling is complete, so the seatbelts are coming on. APU bleed is also coming on. Battery test. And they are charging just fine. Fuel pumps on. Fire test. Is looking good, and we do have some livestock in the holds today, so let's bring it up to around 20 degrees on the aft hold and the front hold as well. Alright, the auxiliary fuel system is in auto, and then last but not least we can turn the PA system on so that any PA gets recorded on the voice recorder. QNH 1029. Here we go, looking good. And it is the 30th of December 2024. Alright, the radios are already set, the weather radar is set. It's always strange for me to not see any TCAS controls or any transponder down here on the pedestal, but we do have it integrated in the main radio over here. So let's go to ATC. TCAS display mode above, TCAS mode auto, altitude reporting on, and well, ATC mode remains on standby, of course. Altitude reporting is on though, above selected, and the TCAS mode is on standby. Alright, looks good. So, HF system. Suppose we will probably not be able to do the HF test, but let's try. No. Well, let's just enter some random other frequency here. 4659, whatever. Let's try that. Okay, we don't hear the tuning signal. I would want to hear some beep tone, which would indicate to us that the HF radios are actually getting tuned. That is what we normally do during the pre-flight, but okay. We'll just leave it at that, probably not simulated. Okay, 1228, 1215, and everything's set on the radios. Well then, let's get straight into our FMS preparation. So, FMGC. Scratch pad messages are all understood, that is okay. Clear those previously stored waypoints. A321-200, LEAP on A engines, the nav database is current. Init, request. And we go from Lisbon to Washington, alternate Baltimore. The flight number is incorrect. It should be TAP231 Papa, so that bug is still not solved. Costa next 20, cruise level 340. And then let's go for the flight plan. Lisbon, depart, runway 02. And now let's bring up our flight plan, and for that we can use the SimBrief options available over here, or the Navigraph charts up here. Really cool that they've been so fast integrating that into our electronic flight bag. So LNOP 1 November departure, which is this one, insert. Then let's go ahead and have a look at the charts. So we go straight ahead to MPUD above 3000. So, MPAD above 3000, Papa Tango 759 above 4000, 764 above flight level 70, then we've got 712, Fairfair and Elnob. Perfect. Initial climb clearance, flight level 100. And then back down into the FMS. So we can remove you. Then let's bring the flight plan back up again. Okay, our arrival into Washington for now is planned on 01 center, but I suppose we're probably going to use 01 right instead. Hyper 9 arrival. Here it is, and we're coming in from Romeo Bravo Victor. Let's see if we do have a transition. Yes, we do. Perfect. Okay, insert. So, quick check through the waypoints themselves. So, 42 north, 20 west is checked. Then we've got 43 north, 30 west. That's also checked. 42 north, 40 west. Also checked. 41 north, 50 west. Also checked. 41 north, 60 west. Checked. And Dovey. The reason we're checking all those waypoints and the coordinates is because we really need to be 100% sure that we are doing our navigation correctly over the Atlantic. And that's something that you don't just want to rely on the database being correct. You don't know if the waypoint called 4160N is really coded correctly at 41 north, 60 degrees west. That's the reason we're checking this. Okay then, let's go on to our emergency waypoints then. So, LISX1, and that's going to be from LPPT runway 02 on the runway track, which is 025, and straight ahead for 25 miles. We can store that one, and then secondary copy LISX1. Insert, holding over there, 025 right hand turns, that's fine for me, and immediate return to LPPT, new destination, arrival, ILS approach, insert. Okay, we can do the same on the fixed page over here, so LPPT02, we'll draw the extended center line, the radial 025, and the emergency waypoint LISX1. Perfect. So next up I would go into the pilot routes, store my route in order to be able to check all the waypoints and airways, but unfortunately that's currently not simulated, so we'll just leave it at that and continue. So at this point we would also enter any step climb that we might have to do, but today we are actually not planned to do any step climb. They do want us to remain in flight level 340 for the entirety of the flight. We would also go ahead and enter our constant Mach number over here, which is currently not simulated in the aircraft, but we can go ahead and request our wind data and then go over into the performance. So 0 fuel 67.8 is the plan. And without knowing the actual CG, we'll just enter 25. Block fuel 23.7. The average wind component is a headwind of 35 knots. And then let's go down a little bit into the fuel figures. So we've got a contingency of 0.7. Alternate fuel is 1.2. And the final reserve fuel for 30 minutes is 1000. Okay, extra fuel, they say 3.1 tons over here. We'll see how much it'll actually be. So on to the performance then, and in here we have a flaps 2 takeoff. We're planned at full toga, and the speed's 164, 173, 174. Like that. Transition altitude 4000 is correct. Noise abatement procedure number 2. Engine out acceleration, however, in 1500 above the ground, like that. And we don't have any derated climb or pre-selection necessary here. apart from the fact that only the A330 supports the D-rated climb, but we'll leave it at that. Alright, and that's our FMS setup complete. So last but not least, up to the FCU. QNH today 1029, 10,000 feet is already in here. And that's it. So, ground flight deck. Mind your ears, oxygen test. Which is unfortunately not simulated, but normally we do the oxygen mask test at this point as well. Okay, and that concludes our flight deck setup. So, are you ready for the departure briefing? Well done, Lisbon, runway 02, and we are departing via the... Come on. And at 1 November departure, initial climb flight level 100. The MSA out here is some 4,000 feet, and we do have, according to the FMS, an hour and 29 minutes of extra fuel. We'll see how that's actually going to develop. Alright, no hotspots for the taxi. Stop margin rejected takeoff is not all that much. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell us exactly how much it is. So, engine outset on the runway track, 25 miles, climbing 4,000 feet. And if we need to make an immediate return, we're above the maximum landing weight, but Lisbon is the best option in the area. I've prepared it on the secondary flight plan, and if time is available, we'll read the overweight landing checklist. If no time available, we can land on runway 02. We do know that because we do those calculations regularly in Air Portugal anyway. Okay, I do have one special, and that's the first altitude constraint here, which the aircraft tells us we're unable to meet over at Ampad, 3,000 feet. So going down here, let's see. Altitude error minus 2,300. Well, I don't believe that. Will definitely be higher than 620 feet over here. But nonetheless, just to be on the safe side, let's change our departure from NADP2 into NADP1. So I'm going to make it 3,000 feet for the acceleration. And that way we should easily make it up to 3,000 feet over at Ampad. Normally the aircraft would update those calculations as well, so that we could see live if the change did make any difference. But well, this one doesn't, so I'll just leave it at that. Alright, I don't have any non-standard operation. Do you have any threats for our departure? Nope. Okay, me neither. So that's that. Cockpit preparation checklist, please. Gear pins and covers, removed. Fuel quantity, 23,680 kilograms. Seatbelts on, ADRs. Oh, that's quite a bit of drift on number 2, but it's alright. Nav and bow ref QNH 1029er. Cockpit preparation checklist complete, and then we can go ahead with the NUT HLA guideline, please. So for the pre-flight, aircraft acceptance, ETOPS, and pre-departure service check. All checked and completed. RVSM equipment, checked. Clock and GPS mode, checked. HF, checked. Message log, erased. ADSC, armed. ATC auto position report, off. IRS full align, performed. Ground speed, checked 0. NUT HLA waypoints on OFP versus primary flight plan cross-checked. Wind data entered, and that's the guideline complete, down to prior Oceanic entry. Alright. Let's go ahead and get GSX to prepare our aircraft for pushback and departure, please. And then the APU is available, ground power can be disconnected. Oh, little lag here as we're looking around. So, GPU is removed, the bulk can be closed as well. Trucks are removed, covers are removed, very good. Alright, so the load sheet should have arrived by now, and the live gross weight is 92.5 and the CG at 32.3. Oh, and I'm of course an idiot, because we are, of course, looking for the zero fuel weight, which is 68.9. So 68.9, 32.3. And we are quite a bit heavier, 1,100 kilos. Let's enter that. Takeoff weight 92.4, looking okay. And, well, we are 1.1 tons heavier, so let's quickly have a look into the flight plan and the operational impacts to see how much extra fuel we need for that. So, zero fuel weight correction plus 1,000 kilos means we need 200 kilos of extra fuel. So we need around 220 kilos extra, which is perfectly fine, as we did load a little bit extra fuel anyway. So that way we are safe, we have the amount of fuel, and we are within the maximum takeoff weight still, 92.4. So let's just go down here onto the takeoff. 93 was originally calculated. Let's do 92,500 just to be on the safe side here. The rest is unchanged. The weather data is unchanged as well. Alright, calculate that please. 164, 173, 174. And that's exactly what we have with a full toga takeoff. So, trim is down 1.3. Like that. Alright, let's close the doors, say hello to our passengers, and then we can go. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome aboard our Air Portugal Flight 231 to Washington. My name is Emmanuel, I'm your captain. With you on the flight deck, a lovely first officer who is eager to fly you over on our Atlantic crossing today. The flight time is calculated at 7 hours and 55 minutes. We do expect some occasional turbulence as we are crossing a couple of strong winds on the Atlantic. We'd like to thank you very much for choosing Air Portugal for today's flight. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight with us. If there is anything we can do for you to make it more enjoyable, please do not hesitate to ask any of our charming cabin crew. Thank you for your attention, and again, welcome aboard. Alright. So at this point, transponder on. And the rest is set. Perfect. Okay. Before start checklist. Park and brake. Set. Takeoff speeds and thrust. V1 164, VR 173, V2 174, toga. Windows. Closed. Beacon on. Before start checklist complete. Ground from flight deck. Go ahead. So please confirm doors and hatches are closed, ground equipment is removed, and the bypass pin is installed. That's all confirmed, Captain. Roger, thanks. We're clear to push, facing south, and the park and brake is now released. Thanks, starting the push, stand by for engine start. Standing by. Alright, and here we go. So, let's just get rid of all those sunshades. Oop, hello there. Okay, we're pushing on to the main taxiway. There are no roads or anything behind us, so I'd say we can go ahead and start our engines pretty much any time. Alright, ground flight, start sequence will be 2 then 1, and we'll begin with engine number 2 now. Clear 2. Engine 2 start. And your pushback is complete. Set the brakes, please. Park and brake set. You're clear to lower the aircraft, remove all equipment, and advise when clear. And we have a good start on engine 2, starting engine 1. Clear 1. So, that is looking all good over here. Waiting for the avail light. Here it is. Engine 1 start. Clear 1. Okay, N2 is increasing. Start valve is open. 29 psi is okay. We do have ignition. We have 2 good engine starts. Clear disconnect, show with the sign on the left with the pin please, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Well, and there the sign is. The pin has been seen. Very good. And the engine start is almost complete down here. The reason I'm sending him away before we actually get the avail light is because once the engine has reached the self-sustaining RPMs, basically there is nothing that can go wrong anymore. Of course, an instructor will now tell me, well, that's not entirely true. And of course the instructor would be right about that, but that's kind of the common practice that we see used on the line all the time. Okay, hand signal is received. After start checklist. Anti-ice, off, ecam status checked, pitch trim, 32% set, rudder trim, neutral, after start checklist complete. Flight control check please. Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right. Neutral. Rudder. Full left. Full right. And neutral. Alright. Clear on the left side. Clear on the right side. Park and brake released. Let's go. Very heavy aircraft. We will need some thrust to get it moving. Our taxi route is fairly easy. We are standing up here. We're going to go southbound on Alpha. Via Mike, we are going to taxi all the way to the holding point, Mike 5, for a full-length departure. So let's quickly align the aircraft with the taxiway here before doing the brake check. And here we go. Brake check. Pressure 0. So I would kind of consider our present position to be on an apron. For this reason, let's not exceed 15 knots over here. Lots of small turns as well, so better safe than sorry. And if there is one thing they taught me in the initial line training, coming from short haul, going to long haul, it is, on long haul, you take a long time for everything. So we don't taxi as fast, we don't, let's say, I don't want to say rush things, but we do everything a tad slower than we do on short haul. Of course, on one hand side, because even though you might do your 5 sectors or your 5 trips every month, that is still only 10 flights. In short haul life, you would do those in 2.5 days. So we do take things rather slow, just because flying long haul, you just don't have that same proficiency you have on an aircraft that you do, 40 landings a month with. In long haul, 40 landings a year is already quite a lot. Okay, so we're approaching Mike. Beautiful grass textures, by the way. Now, I don't know how Air Portugal does it with their crew training, whether they have dedicated A321LR crews that only fly long haul, or whether those crews fly a mix of long and short haul operation, which I could of course imagine, since it is basically an A321 with extra fuel tanks. If you guys know, do put it in the comments below. I'd really be interested in that. So, crossing the former runway that is now decommissioned. But you can still kind of see that this used to be a runway. It really still looks like one. And nowadays it is used to park some aircraft that are not getting used regularly anymore. During the pandemic you could really see all those A330s parked over there. That was quite an impressive sight. So approaching the low-cost apron, this is where Ryanair, etc. park. Well then, no changes or updates to the takeoff briefing. The cabin also just got ready. Excellent. Well then, taxi checklist please. Flight controls, checked. Flap setting, conf 2, radar and predictive wind shear, on and auto, engine start selector, norm, ECA memo, takeoff no blue. Taxi checklist, complete. Okay, left onto Mach 5. We really want to squeeze the full length out of that runway. And it looks like we're clear on the approach. There's no traffic or anything over there. So, runway 02, cleared for takeoff. Cabin crew, prepare for departure.
02.
And that's intentional. Lineup checklist. Takeoff runway 02 full length. TCAS, Tara, packs 1 and 2. Off. Lineup checklist complete. Are you ready for departure? Yep. Takeoff.
On runway 02.
Mantoga, SS runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust set. Incredible how quiet it is. .100 knots, checked. Very high takeoff speeds, so we are gonna spend some time on this runway. V1. Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav. Checked. Ooh, a little bit of turbulence here. Autopilot 1. Thrust climb, auto thrust. And looks like the aircraft is really climbing very well, so the MPAD 3000 feet restriction is a no-brainer. 12 degrees, we don't need anti-ice for those clouds. Pack 2 on. And then at 3000 AGL we will continue our acceleration. Climb. Flaps 1. Speed checked. Flaps 1. So this may look a little bit strange here that the S speed is within the maximum, but if you look at the flaps, you will see that when passing 210 knots, I think, in the A320 series, it's 200 on the A330. Yep, when passing 210, the flaps auto-retract from config 1 plus F into config 1. Then you can see that our maximum speed increases nicely above the S speed, so that we can clean the aircraft up completely. Set standard. Standard cross check, passing level 3, 8, and flaps 0. Speed checked. Flaps 0. Okay, passing level 40 now. Checked. Alright, now look at that. The green dot speed is almost right up at 250 knots. Well, and here we are. We've made it out of Lisbon. So, 8 hours to go until we are going to reach Washington. I gotta say, for a 92-ton aircraft, this is still giving us a pretty good rate of climb. Not used to seeing anything like this from the A330. But you guys have seen that already. Okay, let's continue our climb. Initially something around flight level 200 or so. And once we're above level 100, we are going to go into a little bit more detailed procedures here. Now, something I saw on Flight Radar that seems to happen quite a lot is that once they are out on the initial climb, is you just get a direct to the Oceanic entry point, which is detox today. So let's fly direct to detox. So, detox direct, insert, very good. Still 2,500 feet a minute, which is quite an okay rate of climb. I do have to say, I am surprised by how well the A321LR actually climbs at these weights. I didn't expect that. I thought it would have been a little bit more similar to the A330, because basically, they just bumped the maximum weight of the aircraft up, but you know, the engines are still the same engines, kinda. Of course, a little bit uprated, software-wise. Okay, passing level 100. Clear and copy, please. And let's wait a small moment with our passengers. So, remove everything on the fix info page. The RADNAV is already clear. Secondary flight plan, copy active. Progress page. Of course, we can enter our immediate return. Runway over here. And then, cruise 340, optimum 335, maximum 342. Well, that's perfectly fine. So, flight level 340 it is. So let's just wait until the acceleration is completed, because we still have a little bit of turbulence every now and then. I don't want to release our passengers, you know, that early. We do have more than sufficient time available. Even though it is an A321, we are not doing short-haul operation today, so plenty of time available. We can wait with releasing our cabin crew. Now, let's climb to flight level 340, and while we do that, we can go ahead with a couple of the Oceanic entry checks that we still have to perform. So let's first of all start by entering all those Oceanic waypoints. So, stored waypoints, new waypoint. Now let's have a look in our flight plan. And scrolling down a little bit. Here we've got our ETOPS summary. So our entry airport is going to be Lajes. I have to say this is a little bit simplified though, because if you look at the chart, you can see that there is a small ETOPS segment here between Porto and Lajes already, but unfortunately, SimBrief doesn't really depict this well. In the real world, it would have calculated ETOPS entry 1 over here, ETOPS exit 1 over here, ETOPS entry 2 here, and then ETOPS exit 2 over here. Unfortunately, SimBrief only supports one ETOPS segment at the time, so this is something that I do hope they are going to change in the future. But in any case, our first entry waypoint, let's call it entry 1. In the real world it would be EEP1, but there is a small bug that can cause a crash to desktop here. So that's at 4130.8 north. And 1724.5 west. Alright, and we can store that. Then, new waypoint, now comes the first equal time point, and unfortunately the only one here. Again, in the real world, we'd have one between Porto and Lajes as well. So that, in the real world, we would name it by the IATA codes of the airports. Unfortunately, it doesn't really support that here, so I'll just call it ETP1, and that's going to be 4143.4 north. And 4349.7 west. Store that, and then new waypoint, that's gonna be our ETOPS exit number 1. And that's down here at 4106.4 north. And 5418.3 west. Alright, store that. Now let's go on to the fix info page. Entry 1 in here, then ETP1 and exit 1. The reason we mark those via the fix info page and don't just insert them into the flight plan is because once you actually enter Oceanic airspace, ATC is going to download the flight plan from your FMS. And if there is any waypoint in here that does not match your Oceanic clearance, you have a problem. So for this reason, you must enter those waypoints via the fix page and not via the flight plan page. Pretty important, really pretty important. Okay, the next thing for us to do is the track and distance check, and for that we go up into our nav log over here. Quick look at our aircraft performance, by the way, still climbing fine. And we do seem clear of turbulence now, so let's release our passengers. And passengers are released. Okay, now next up we are going to do our track distance check. That is once again a check conducted in order to ensure that the waypoints entered in here are correct. You will recall that I did put quite a bit of emphasis on this particular topic during our pre-flight preparations already, but you will notice that I'm once again putting emphasis on this in-flight as well. So how do we do this? Quite easy. So what's important to notice is that those tracks over here are in degrees true, not magnetic. Unfortunately, the A321LR doesn't have the ability to switch over to true, and we are stuck with magnetic, so we might have some differences there, but let's go ahead and try. So from detox we go to 42 north, 20 degrees west on a track of 286, 233 nautical miles. And here we've got a track 292, 232 miles. Now, small deviations in the track do occur, because the track shown on the FMS is the average, and on the flight plan is the initial track. Since we've got rather long segments, however, those tracks do differ. I'm sure you've already noticed that even though you're flying on a straight line on your ND, the actual course decreases as we are flying westbound and increases as we're flying eastbound on the northern hemisphere. Now, let's check the next one. From 42 north 20 west, we proceed towards 43 north 30 west, track 281, 446 miles. And in here we've got 290, 446 miles. Then we continue towards 42 north 40 west, track 265, 446 miles. And in here we have track 278, 446 miles. Now, the tracks, again, a little bit different because the flight plan uses degrees true, while the FMS is in magnetic at the moment. So, then we continue towards 41 north 50 west, track 265, 453 miles. And we have track 281, 453 miles. Now, you will see that these tracks are getting rather large here. Remember, Newfoundland has a magnetic deviation of around 20 degrees, or variation I should call it correctly. So if you take the 281 over here and then subtract 20 degrees, you're at roughly 261, and 4 degrees distance at around 450 miles in the typical northern Atlantic is roughly correct. So therefore we can say that these tracks are correct. Then we continue towards 41 north 60 west, track 273, 453 miles. And we've got 289, 452 miles. Then we continue towards Dovey, track 273, 317 miles. And in here, 289, 316 miles. The miles match within a mile or so. The tracks, as explained. But overall, I tend to say that this is quite okay and within an acceptable limit. For the flight simulation, of course. Alright, so with that, all our tracks are checked. We are still nicely climbing, only doing 1,000 feet a minute now, completely fine. So let's continue with the NUT HLA guideline, please. Prior to Oceanic entry, nav accuracy checked, RBSM, altimeter and equipment are checked. CPDLC lock-on, well, is not available here. Oceanic clearance is obtained, FMS cross-check, navlog is not required to modify. Oceanic clearance recorded, north reference true button not installed in this aircraft, Oceanic waypoint cross-check performed, alternate airports, weather and NOTAMs. So let's go ahead and have a look. We start with Porto, LPPR. And we have very good weather over there. Then we continue via Loches, LPLA. It's a pity that you can't actually see what you're typing here. Alright, Loches has good weather conditions as well. And on the other side, Charlie, Yankee, Juliet, Tango is also looking very good. 0 degrees at the moment, which is quite alright. So, alternate airport weather and NOTAMs checked, ETP decided and set, and that's the NUT HLA guideline complete down to the actual Oceanic entry. So the next points in the guideline would just be HF frequencies obtained, cell call check perform, assigned Mach number maintained, slop consider, out of VHF range, VHF 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, VHF 2, 1 to 1.5, contingency procedures review, and 10 minutes after entry, Squawk 2000. Alright, so let's go ahead and do a very quick contingency procedure review for the North Atlantic, and thereafter I'll leave you guys to some cheesy music and some excellent views of some clouds passing by. But let's go ahead and have a look at the contingency procedures first of all. So there are 3 cases of things that can happen to us when we're flying across the North Atlantic. The first one is an engine failure. In case an engine fails, what are we going to do? Well, there are different strategies available, but normally the first thing for us to do is to minimize the rate of descent. How do we do that? Thrust levers in an MCT, disconnect auto thrust, and what happens then is you get maximum thrust on the remaining engine, which minimizes your airspeed loss, but you don't initiate a descent just yet. Pull the heading, turn off track. Now you will remember, looking at our flight today, that the organized track system is to the north, but our alternate, first of all, is located to the south only later, when our track diverges a bit more from the tracks then we've got an alternate up to the north. So what are we going to do? Well, at first, until we reach the equal time point, we are going to deviate to the left. So 30 degrees off to the left. Then take up a 5-degree offset. And once we're offset, when our speed reaches green dot, then we are going to initiate our descent at the green dot speed until we are 5 miles offset. Thereafter, we are going to go into a normal descent below the NUT HLA airspace, so flight level 280 or lower. Now, what would we expect here if we lose an engine now? The aircraft would tell us our receivable maximum altitude, and that would be somewhere around level 240-ish. So we are going to descend roughly level 220, and that is going to keep us in a safe place. Now, how are we going to do that on the FM or on the autoflight system then? Well, with our thrust levers in MCT and auto thrust disconnected, we can just go into open descent, but the engine is going to remain in MCT since auto thrust is not active. Thereby, we are going to maintain our green dot speed, and the aircraft is going to give you the shallowest descent possible. Why do we do that? Because until we are 5 miles off track, we might run the risk of flying into anyone that's flying below us. So therefore, we minimize our rate of descent until we are 5 off track. Once we are 5 off track, simply engage auto thrust again. With open descent active, auto thrust is going to go into thrust idle. Therefore, the remaining engine goes to idle, and we start descending quicker. Once we're below the North Atlantic high-level airspace, so below level 280, we are going to initiate our diversion with a direct to the alternate airport. And then we have lots of time available, and once that is done, we can run the ECAM actions and decide on the further course of action. Now, another possibility that we may face, what can happen to us in the North Atlantic, is that we are unable to get into contact with ATC in case we need to do any deviation. And that may, for example, be due to weather. What are we going to do then? Well, if we can stay within 5 miles from the track, we are simply going to do the deviation on our own, announcing it on 1 to 1.5, so that anyone in the area will be aware of what's going on. If we need to exceed 5 nautical miles, then we are going to climb or descend as needed. So if we deviate towards the North Pole, we are going to descend 300 feet. If we deviate towards the equator, we are going to climb by 300 feet. Well, and that's already that. Of course, we will try to get an ATC clearance, but if we can't get one in time, that's what we're going to do. The last case of what could happen to us is a rapid decompression. So how are we going to handle that? Well, standard memory items do apply. First things first, oxygen mask on. When that is done, altitude down, open descent, fly off track, again resume 5 nautical miles off track, to the left or to the right, depending on the traffic situation and where the alternate airport is located, and then decide what we're going to do on the speed. If structural damage is suspected, we will just maintain the current airspeed, otherwise we can go all the way up to the maximum. Once we're down to level 100, we can then decide on the further course of action. Of course, signs on, all lights on, squawk 7700, and make a broadcast on 1 to 1.5 again. Well, and that's mostly it. So do you have any more questions on that? No? Excellent. So with that, we are cleared into the North Atlantic. We have completed all the checklists and procedures that we needed to do, and then I'm looking forward to see you all as we're approaching Washington. 7 hours 22 flight time. Let's go ahead and start preparing for our arrival into Washington. We'll start with some of the basics here, so let's go ahead and update the weather to see what we have. The 270-12 gusts 23 and 16 degrees, altimeter 2974. Let's start presetting that altimeter. So 2974 set once and set twice. Well then, let's go ahead and start some of our arrival preparation. First of all, we are going to have a look at the airport charts that we have available, and they do have runway 1 or 19 with the wind coming from 270 and 10 degrees west variation. We could probably switch over to landing on runway 19 in order to make our arrival a little bit shorter over here. Let's go ahead and give that a try. So, we are just past Romeo Bravo Victor on the arrival. That means we gotta reselect that star, so let's see what the add-on is going to do when I'm changing this. So ILS 19 center, and the arrival stays the Hyper 9 arrival from Romeo Bravo Victor, like that. And then let's have a look into the approach charts as well. So that's gonna be 19 center now. And we can take the NOx transition over here to make our things a little bit shorter. So, NOx, insert. Now let's go direct to bank again. Direct to insert. What's it trying to do? Heading. Okay, we are just over at that waypoint, so let's fly direct to hikes instead. Alright, nav, hikes, looking good. Top of descent in around 25 miles. So, coming in from Robbinsville down here, and the arrival is going to be Robbinsville, bank, hikes, and then Lancaster VOR, and we are in Mount Hikes and thereafter Lancaster already. And onto the plan mode, constraints please. Let's see what we have. So, out of Lancaster, we proceed towards Joan, Delro, Lurch, Bins, and then Hyper, 250 knots, 10,000 feet. And that's exactly what we have over here. So, from Hyper landing 19, we proceed towards Pat at 9,000 feet, and then on the heading 230, which is exactly what we have in the FMS over here. Going on to the ILS 19 center chart from NOx towards Charlotte, Cower, Koval, and we do have some altitudes for all of these. So NOx 9,000, Charlotte 8,000, Cower 7,000, and Koval at 6,000. And indeed, we have all of those, and thereafter we continue at Chetman, Cots, Crackle, Clots, and we do have altitudes over here as well, with all track. Alright, so finally Femco 1500 is our final approach point, and we do have that right down here. And in case of a missed approach, climb to 3,000 feet, direct move and hold. Alright, and that's 3,000 feet, move and hold. Very good, that's about as easy as it gets. So we don't need any radios over here. Kilo India Alpha Delta 19 center for the FMS. On the performance page, 0.76, 286 looks just about fine. On to the approach page then, and we've got 270 at 12, 16 degrees, 2974. So minimum for the approach is 472. Here we go, and if we select Conf 3 we are at around 150 knots, but that's fine for me. And in case of missed approach, MSA is 3,500, but the missed approach altitude is just 3,000, so we'll select EO, engine out acceleration at 3,000. Alright, an hour and 19 minutes extra, secondary becomes a caveat of the active, and then let's go ahead and start our descent via the star down to 20,000 or flight level 200 at first. So we have descent, alt, flight level 200 blue. Unfortunately, we don't have a landing performance calculator implemented in the aircraft, but if we just, well, honestly, leave the auto brake off, then we still have some 3,000 meters of runway here. Yeah, 3,500, so more than plenty of runway. We'll vacate somewhere over here, Yankee 7, which leads us directly to the ramp. And that should be about, well, over 2,000 meters. So auto brake off, maximum reverse will bring us to a standstill just about fine. Since we selected config 3 for the landing, we also got to select landing flaps 3 up here on the GPWF panel. Seatbelt signs can come on, since we are going to be landing in around half an hour, a little bit less, even just 25 minutes now. Mach. Well, and then I'd say we can quickly say goodbye to our guests and then do the approach briefing, please. Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We started our descent towards Washington, remaining flight time now about 25 minutes. The weather at the moment, a little bit windy coming from the west, and the sky is scattered with clouds. Temperature is 16 degrees Celsius. We'd like to thank you very much for choosing Air Portugal for today's flight. Hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we did, and look forward to welcoming you again on board of a future flight. Thank you very much, and once again, Happy New Year. Okay, GCAS below. And then, if you are ready, we can start the approach briefing, please. Alright, Hyper 9 arrival, ILS 19 center, and the minimum for that one is 472 feet. Go around straight ahead, climbing 3000, and extra fuel for 1 hour. Perfect. Manual approach, flight directors on, landing config 3, stop margin over 1,000 meters. Reversers will be used in maximum, auto brake off. We'll vacate the runway to the left. I don't see any hotspots for the taxi in, and I do not have anything special on non-standard. Do you? No? Threats? Honestly, I don't see any. So that's our approach briefing completed. Well then, let's fast forward a little bit, and I see you a little bit further down on the arrival. We are getting closer, and we've just passed 10,000 feet. Let's continue our descent in line with the arrival, down to 8,000 at first, and we can fly direct to Knox in order to join the final approach for runway 19 left. So Knox, direct 2. Let's have a look into the latest weather, see if there are any updates available, but it's now 270 at 12, gust 23 still, so basically no big changes here. So we are, for the time being, descending via the arrival down to 5,000, and that's alt constraint star, leveling off in 9,000 for our first waypoint, Knox. Now, let's run the 10,000 foot checks. So the signs are on, the lights are on, constraints, LS is all selected. We do have GPS primary, and the engine mode selector is in the norm position. Now, you might have seen me play a little bit with the frequencies down here, and I will show you the reason just now. Listen to this. I have absolutely no clue what this is, but let's turn off VHF 2. For some reason on 21.5 there are some strange sounds going on. Some might call it realistic, others might call it, well, not. In any case, we can go ahead now and run the approach checklist. Barrel reference, QNH 2974, seatbelts on, minimum, barrel 472, auto brake, off, engine start selector, norm, approach checklist completed. So, we're not receiving anything from the ILS just yet. Let's quickly confirm that the frequency is correct, since there were a couple of issues there. And indeed, there is an issue there. If you look at this, the correct frequency for the ILS approach runway 19 center is 111.3. For some strange reason, it's tuned something completely different. So that's India Delta Lima X-ray. 111.3, 190, well, it should be 191 according to the chart. Here we go. That is better. Still not receiving anything, but looking down at the FMS, we are still 30 miles out, so that is kinda expected. In the real world, you would definitely receive the ILS yet. In the simulator, I really don't know why. They limit the reception range to 25 miles. Not very realistic. I suspect that they do this because of the guaranteed range at which you can receive the ILS without any interference, which is 25 miles. That's the ICAO standard for the localizer anyway, and for the glide slope 17 miles. However, that's just the range where it is guaranteed to be correct. But in the real world, you often receive the ILS much further out, like 30, 40 miles-ish. The DME up to whatever is in your line of sight, so that can be up to 200 miles out in some cases. Usually, well, I've seen the DMEs of ILSs being received like 80 to 100 miles out. Theoretically, the range is even further than that, though. In any case, that is something that I do hope they are eventually going to update here. So now we have 8000 and alt magenta, and that is going to go further down. And here we go, the ILS is coming in now. Localizer alive. And let's take a guess, 25 miles? Yep, exactly 25 miles. The good old FS bug. In any case, since we do receive it, lock start. Weather itself seems to be pretty good, so let's have a little bit of fun and take over manually. So what's my plane doing? Why is it going left and right? Hello there. I'm not doing any inputs, as you can see. Okay, tell you what. Autopilot 1. We had that on our departure already. I really have no clue why, but I did see this every now and then. Well, let's keep the autopilot on for a bit. So runway inside on our 12 o'clock. Engine anti-ice off. Okay, anti-ice, ice detected. Ecam actions, engine 1 anti-ice on. So that's anti-ice, engine 1 on. Oh, and now it went away. Okay, well, in that case, anti-ice off again. That's strange, okay. So it wants us to put both engine anti-ices on. But if I put on only a single one, let's try number 2 this time, the Ecam already goes away, which would signal that the condition that's been triggering it has been resolved. But if I turn it back off again, the message comes back. Yeah, that's strange. Not supposed to work like that. Okay, glass globe is alive. Let's continue the descent a little bit further, and then approach is armed. Cathode dual, autopilot 1 and 2, glide slope blue. Manage speed, activate approach phase. Glide slope start. And go around altitude 3000 is set. Glide slope. Wind is coming nicely from the right. A little bit of headwind component included. Looking very, very good. Okay, a bit of speed brake in order to help it lose some of that airspeed. Typical Airbus, the VLS comes up quite a bit, so flaps 1. Speed checked, flaps 1. Now that flap should definitely bring the VLS down, which it does. Excellent. So let's get it down to something decent, 170 knots or so. Checked. Okay, flaps 2. Speed checked. Oop. That click spot is inverted. That's a little bit strange at times, leading to situations like these, when you accidentally move the lever into the wrong position. Okay, you go to idle now. And the speed brake comes back out, please. Thanks. Alright, if the VLS is up that high with the speed brakes extended, you can try to retract them partially to like the half position. That normally helps quite a bit already. Takes a little time to respond, but you can see it did go down a bit now. Okay, so we're at a good speed, spoilers are coming back in, and then gear down. Flaps 3, speed checked. Manage speed. Let's do another attempt at turning the anti-ice off. Make sure the cabin is actually ready. Okay, landing checklist, ECAM memo, landing no blue, landing checklist complete. Alright, let's do another attempt at turning that autopilot off, see what's gonna happen to the bank.
1000.
Checked. Okay, manual flight. This time it's behaving. But that was really strange going left and... Oh no, there it starts again.
19, center.
Just to be entirely clear, this little bit of wobbling you see left and right, that is the airplane doing something by itself. That is not an input that I'm making to the system.
400.
Land.
300.
Now I'll just take this left and right as a bit of turbulence, though I'm pretty sure it isn't.
Minimum.
Oh, nice little mismatch between glide slope and Poppy.
100.
Well, continue.
50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 10. Retard. 5. Retard. Retard. Retard.
I did retard. Well, here we are. Okay, spoiler, reverse green. Decel. And manual brakes.
1,500 meters.
We'll take the next exit to the left.
1,200
70 knots.
remaining.
And with that, welcome to Washington. So let's vacate that runway over here. And here we are. So we're initially going to stop the aircraft over here. Too many turns to be done in a short amount of time here. So transponder standby, weather radar off, the time has already been stopped, strobes off, landing lights retract, no slide off. And then let's go ahead and start the APU straight away. Like that. Okay, after landing checklist, radar and predictive wind shear off, after landing checklist complete. Perfect, so with that, welcome to Washington. Let's go ahead and find ourselves a gate. And for that, if you don't know where to park, we can always just use Flight Radar 24. And we will immediately determine that we go straight at and a little bit to the left. Let's find that gate number. So, taxi charts, parking gates. And we'll park over here on Bravo 48. So, a tiny bit to the left. Now you can see why I did the after landing procedures with the aircraft stationary. In the real world, you would of course have done them while rolling, as you don't want to block the exit of the runway. So, a bit to the left over here, then to the right again. And here we are. So, GSX, we're looking for Bravo 48. If you would be so kind not to get stuck, restart Throttle. Oh boy, GSX. Such an annoying piece of software. Okay, well, so, in the absence of GSX, we are just going to park ourselves. So the lights are going off, and we'll take the next gate on the left-hand side here. So, Bravo 68, there it is. Okay, since we don't have a marshal, we are just going to park ourselves here. Something like that. Here we are. Park brake set, APU bleed on, and shut down. 1 and 2. Cabin crew, all doors in park. Alright, the engines are running down. And here we go. Beacon off, seatbelts off. Parking checklist. Parking brake trucks, brake set, engines off, wing light off, fuel pumps off, parking checklist complete. So let's see if we do have a working jetway here. No, we don't want you. So long, ATC, you go in a standby please. Squawk 2000 is already selected. Then onto the fuel pages. Fuel usage was rather even. That is looking good. A little bit stuck in the center tank though. No idea why that is. Probably shouldn't be, since the fuel quantities normally only show you the usable fuel and not the unusable fuel. Alright, and last but not least, position monitor. The IRSs ran rather well. Number 2 drifted a tiny bit, but this is all within limits. Something like, you know, 8 or 9 miles could very well be expected in a situation like this, so I suppose this is a little bit simplified down here, but that's fine. In any case, that's all I can offer you today. I do hope that you all have enjoyed the flight. 7 hours and 58. And here we are in Washington, Dulles on the Airbus A321 coming from Europe. Now, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would ever do a flight like this, I would probably have given you the bird. But Airbus made it possible. Really, really impressive what's possible now. And opening up a lot of markets for airlines that would previously have to use a wide body with very few passengers making the flights. Not really worth it. But the A321LR and the XLR still to come really are opening up new markets, as we can see. I do hope you all enjoyed this one. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. I'm very much looking forward to them. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.